Okay, this is George Lees talking from Scotland, and I'm talking to John Patterson in London. He's on vacation at the moment, but he's working like a slave because we're enthusiasts for the return of democracy to decency and solvency. And where we left off last night, where John has lost his videos, is on the massive jokes in the religious sector that mean that almost all the messianic religions are involved in massive fraud, money laundering, and the geopolitical brutalization of the world for religious reasons. And that covers all the genocides, it covers all of the false saints and pilgrimages to places like northern Spain or southern Spain in the Pyrenean region, where we celebrate the life, in inverted commas, of Saint Agio, the Santiago, and all of the jokes around the European saints and the New Testament icons that launched the King James Bible. So I'm starting us off with a picture of Cardinal Wolsey, where we left off last night, the LSD concept, the pounds, shillings and pence, and a picture of George Osborne smiling like the greedy twit that he is, with a red suitcase with the Queen's royal crown icon on it, and statements about the authorship of the New Testament involving Spottiswoode, Scrivener, Norton, Ayr and Blaney, and Cambridge and Oxford University Press, which is I failed to put into yesterday's video. Okay, so that's all boring. What I'm going to talk about today is the massive crimes of Lord Michael Grade. He's got a longer name than that in the official business register, but his list of interlocking directors and financial crimes is one of the longest I've seen in my history as a fraud researcher. And it will cover people that are TV icons, it will cover people that you've never heard of before, it will give you the director ID for Michael Jackson, the pop singer at Sony, and it will give you insight into how people that are TV icons like Hugh Fernley Whittingstall are right in up to their necks in the money laundering sector. And you remember how Gordon Bowden told us a little story about Ingenious Films LLP2 and the German villains that were at the top of that system. Yeah, I've now discovered 250 Ponzi shelves of Ingenious Operations Inc. All of them have 230 current directors drawing down undisclosed salaries. The fraud is absolutely massive, and it is right through the Zionist TV, media and film networks.
That's why we're never going to see it on BBC.
It's entirely for profit. So let me start the story. We'll stay with religion for the moment, and this is bullshit. Yeah, I'm a simple person. I'm a great admirer of the El Cid movie, where you get a heroic character coming in to fight with Muslims and Moorish people against the brutalization of his country, Spain. Now, the whole of that story is a fake up, as is European history, but what I want to tell you is the versions of how Wikipedia portray our links to God in a biblical context. We talked yesterday about the translation into English of the Bible stories. So let me just read the Wikipedia entry. It is gobbledygook to me, but it will lead you into the subject of the first part of this discussion. Okay, so in the Old Testament the translators render the tetragrammation YHWH by, in inverted commas, the Lord. So YHWH. You can see the relevance of Yahweh to that. Yahweh, and you know that a lot of river names are named after that, as you'll see with Lord Grade later on. Okay, the Lord. So there's one interpretation of it. In later editions, in small capitals as Lord or the Lord God. For YHWH Elohim, then you've got Hebrew characters that include the swastika and the word Nin at the end. You remember our discussion on El Nino?
Yeah.
All of that comes from the Hebrew root. Yeah, like the Lal Matano, which means in Hebrew the apple, which is where Princess Diana got it in the neck.
Yeah.
Okay, and then except in 4 places by the word Jehovah. However, and I've highlighted this in Rothschild's yellow, if the tetragrammation occurs with the Hebrew word Adonai, in brackets Lord, then it is rendered not as the Lord, but as the Lord God. So there's some bullshit from you on the translation in the Bible that took us several centuries to make, as people got culled in every pagan nation across the world, as Britain and the Five Flies invented the ship to go and brutalise the pagan nations. But that takes me neatly in the word Adonai to Lord Adonis. His full title, and if you interpret that correctly as I have, what the man's name is the Lord. Yeah, you get the joke?
Yeah.
And this is a bald character who's a Labour politician, i.e. a socialist, like Jesus. Used to work with the ordinary people and warned us about the money lenders. Okay? He joined the House of Lords on the 16th of May 2005 in the Blair Life Peerage sector, which we know all about. That man Blair is the envoy to the Middle East. At the top of the image there is a picture of Lord's cricket ground, which human beings think is a really good joke to share. Yeah, Lord's cricket ground. In other words, we are more powerful than the gods that made the universe, and we love to have a joke about it. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the next image now, and we're right into some of the financial crimes of the Institute for Public Policy Research, for which Lord Adonis is a registered director. He's a director at Ever Director Limited, Ever Secretary Limited, and they've got almost 2,000 crashed companies each. Okay. His registered business address is House of Lords, Houses of Parliament, London, England, SWA 1A 0AA. Okay.
That's the same as our mates.
Yeah, it's the same as all of them get up to. The combined cash at bank value for all businesses where Andrew holds a current appointment equals £86 million, with a combined assets value of £148 million and liabilities of £109 million. This is from the House of Lords, director number 907 557 904, Lord Andrew Adonis, the Lord. Yeah, you get the joke? It's cynical, absolutely hypocritical. This man leads with the name Perminta, which just happened to be a student I worked with in the PhD programs in New Zealand, but she has lost my Facebook friendship in recent weeks since I discovered her elite links. So in the Institute for Public Policy Research you have Lord Adonis, you have Lord Clive Richard Hollick of Notting Hill, you have Rupert James Levy, Mr. Timothy John Benn, Miss Christina Grace Benn, and you have the corrupted laundering firms York Place Company nominees, York Place Company secretaries, Ever Director Limited, Ever Secretary Limited. So it's like the Zahawi system. They're creating the money stream in the House of Lords or the House of Commons, and they're laundering it out of the country using the methods and the elite names as cover for their activities that get together as alumni at Oxford University, Cambridge University, and they continue to steal from the people. So Adonis has got 2 director registrations. I've given you one of them already. The other one is director number 916775453, no postcode available. Now that is an instant company, like the ones that I described with the windmill for the Rothschilds the other day. Instead of having a timeline of several decades for the directorial and secretarial records, they have only 1 year, and it's sectored up so that the thin blue line for that year of asset stripping is really quite thick. And they deploy people on that, and they've got a company cynically called the Transformation Trust England, which does massive money laundering and cash switches from different Ponzi shelves in different countries into the havens and elsewhere. Okay, and I've got a list of names. Mr. P.M. Hackwell resigned as company secretary, Mr. C. Dayton Fox appointed, and all of this is happening around 2011 and 2012, when Adonis was in charge of these illicit companies in the House of Lords. Okay, the Transformation Trust England has got a net worth of only £229,000, and it's registered in Throgmorton Street, London. Okay, we'll follow that. But if you understood what Gordon was describing to me before Gordon jumped ship and refused to talk about the people at the head of these systems, then you would understand that the spoke and wheel model is always applied. So if you follow from the hub of Lord Adonis out into the middle of the what do you call the things that connect the wheel to the hub? The spokes.
The spokes.
Yeah. So if you go just a little way out from the parliamentary connections, you find a woman called Eleanor Kate Irving, and I find it quite freakish that when you make posts on Irvings, that that none of them are about the financial frauds that we discover and we talk about that are creating the sensation. But this woman is one of the minions at ITV and Carlton and al. And what they do under Lord Grade's immediate control at the hub of the wheel, they crash and asset strip all of the corporations that are fraudulently registered under their thrall. So the money stream that I followed to get Eleanor K. Irving, business director number 907917703, registered address, wait for it, the London Television Centre, Upper Ground, London, United Kingdom, SE1 9LT. So I've gone from Lord Adonis, company and director search, through Andrew Adonis, director information, IPPR Trading Limited, Matthew Taylor, because that caught my eye because of your friend Matthew Taylor, but I don't know whether it's the same.
It's not a friend, George, come on. It's not a friend, is he?
Well, he's now become my friend since I revealed that the Anzac cull was a cull at the Anzac people's expense, and as has
serious?
Yeah, as has the Maori warlord. They were false flag diversions, but if you tell a Maori that he is standing for the people that culled the Anzacs in World War I and have a laugh at it, then that Maori feels ever so dangerous that he is siding with Philip Hammond and the killers of the Anzac nation, who were led by Winston Churchill and who were laughed at by Mr. Bean at the London Olympics. It is a really dangerous thing to be caught with your pants down on the wrong side of a genocidal team.
Yep, definitely. Yep.
Okay, so then I go from Matthew Taylor to Pinnacle People Limited, and remember all of these have direct links to Andrew Adonis' system as you follow your route out through the spoke. Roxburgh Milkins LLP. Roxburgh is a local name for me, and then you get Marco Sodi, which gives you some sort of Italian connection, and then you get GL Education number 2 Limited, and when you look for K. Irving on that, then you get a massive list of Ponzi shelves. ITV Text, Carlton Company 97, RSA Advertising Holdings, Place Clever, Universal Film Laboratory, CDSS Limited, Carlton Co 36, 35, Carlton Electronics, Ace 1998 Limited. That's just the top 6 of what are lists in 2 or 3 columns This woman is a company director and a company secretary on all of these shelves. Okay, I'm on to the second page now. London Weekend Television Limited, Carlton Content Holdings Limited, Granada Screen 2005 Limited. And remember that the initial interest in this was following Lord Adonis and following also Michael Grade, who has been a big executive in all of the ITV networks. He's been married 3 times, to give you some insight into his religious beliefs. And he is a massive media manipulator. And when you get to the end of Kate Irving's listings, you find several links to Zion. Yeah? Because what is happening here, and we talked about Moses, the Moses character, and the Santa Claus Joker with his registered business. So what you find at the bottom of the list is ITV Studios brackets Israel Limited, Zebedee Productions Limited. You remember when you were a child and you were watching
Zebedee.
Yeah. You remember the programme that preceded the BBC News that featured a cartoon character on a spring, like the moneylenders that Jesus warned us about. Bouncing back.
Fantastic.
And then if you look further down Kate's listings, you see I've got a picture at the bottom of law lords, which I believe that Andrew Adonis is, in the second chamber with their wigs on, looking as if they're having a tag wrestling game. And they are in a state of panic. The last of the highlighted holdings that I've got on the massive list for Kate Irving is ITV Holdings Caymans Limited. You get the gist of it?
Yes.
Massive fraud by leaders of society from the Parliament buildings, first and second chamber. I've not gotten on to Michael Grade yet. But you remember me telling you a few weeks ago that when I looked up Michael Grade in my own living room on the telly, it crashed my computer that I was using to fuel that telly with images. And I thought, how can somebody that's a public figure like that be a villain? It becomes very easy to understand that when you just read his Wikipedia profile and how you see how they transfer people out of this sector into the football governance sector. Everywhere there's a profit to be made from the masses, they will do it without any conscience at all.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then when you see that link to Israel and you look it up on the internet, it's like looking it up in the Times or the Telegraph or the Argos, which you frequently do. It gives you some false flag news headlines which really could be quite offensive. ITV Studios forges partnership with Israeli broadcaster. Do you know what the Americans call the banking crash of 2008? We call it the banking crash of 2008. What do the Americans call it? You're enabled in.
The implosion?
No, they call it the reset.
Oh, okay, yeah, go on.
You're aware of that? So can you guess? Can you guess what Michael Grade and Kate Irving's new company is out of Tel Aviv?
Reset.
Reshet, with an H for hell inserted in it.
Yeah.
And you can see that the Ponzi methods that they use, and on the front of that I've marked Hallmark secretaries, David Richard Holland, you know, the man that got the French president elected, that's involved in all those things in the London Stock Exchange. Miss Eleanor K. Irving's ITV Studios Israel Limited. They're not in Israel at all. They're in the hellish centre of the financial world. Registered address, the London Television Centre, Upper Ground, London, SE1 9LT. Okay? So then I began to look. You told me yesterday that you're still learning how to use company check.
I can use it, George, but it's when you start going into the associations, it just goes on and on and on.
Well, that's the nature of the business. The spoken wheel model has so many culprits out near the rim that none of the people warrant attention when they're at the hub. even if it's Princess Anne or Prince Charles, or
and she trades under a different name.
Lawrence, yeah, it's her new married name, Laurence. She's had a massive purge on the number of holdings that she declares now since we began to hit on her as, you know, a thief.
That's it.
And you know, she's a thief in the Olympics commissioning body with Nick Clegg and Martin Sorrell and all those names that we keep mentioning. But I've got a new.
How much money do these people need, George?
Well, they cannot.
There's people on the streets that can't eat, for Christ's sakes.
That's right, and they are now planning a UN meeting in Cardiff, where a lot of my former students are, and they are unprepared to discuss the cost of protecting the UN thieves that meet globally 4 times a year, and the people that they take to those summits with them, who are civil servants and earn £250,000 to be fraudsters on behalf of the UN. They're called Sherpas at those meetings, and all of the people are picked out of lists of names like the names I'm going to reveal now. So there's a whole series of companies, and I began to list them all, but I'm only going to give you the highlights.
Okay, but you're naming names here.
Absolutely, you've got to name names if you want to bring the system down. You're talking about a media leader who's at the head of society. You're talking already about links to Hollick, and you understand, having been in Notting Hill this week, how Hollick operates. None of the massive things that he gets into, including the directorship of the London Stock Exchange, which is one of the most corrupted institutions on the globe. If you look it up on Wikipedia, the man that runs the London Stock Exchange is not even listed on the company check register. The villains are all in pinstripe suits, they're all in the House of Lords, or they're on their way to the knighthood.
Yes.
And you get the knighthood for being an evil bastard now, and from stealing from the treasury and dismembering our country's sovereignty, like Grade and his...
Look at the sort of people they knight. Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
I could go on and on.
So Lady Francesca Mary Grade is a Ponzi criminal with him. They use Form 10 directors and Form 10 secretaries in 3 days in May 2005 to do massive money swaps and asset stripping. And what they're doing is that they rotate their directorships and their secretarial commitments on a 5-year cycle. So they keep appearing in the business register with those thin blue lines, but they just keep laundering the assets around. They keep declaring themselves in league with the big banks and the corrupted money lenders that we talk about on a daily basis that are fucking up everybody's pension funds. They then take their massive salaries from that, and the lists that you'll see at the end of this bulletin are massive. It's 250 current directors at a time, including... So let me just... You've seen in the news that in this network this week I've discovered Mr. Ridley Scott. You know Ridley Scott that makes the beautiful science fiction films? About the Fifth Element? And you've seen in the news that there has been a Bada Bunga eruption this week?
Yes, many.
And so that's the connection to Ridley Scott and the Fifth Element. If there is a Fifth Element, it's either you or me, and they know that we are hunting them down. If you look at Grade's listings, you get Ben Ainsley Racing Holdings Limited, relatively small beer, WRG Manchester. If you look at the bowels of those companies, all of them are launderers and thieves.